Today, I guess we'll be having a little bit of a philosophical discussion, interaction, discourse, kind of. So, one of the one of the so-called, I don't know the word you use for it, maxims you hear in your life is that someone who has been caught doing something they shouldn't, they run away with their tail between their legs and hide their heads in shame. Yeah, so they've been caught, right? They've been caught doing something wicked, or they've been found out, or their wicked plans have been discovered, and therefore they always run away with their heads between their tails. That is probably one of the most bullshit things that's ever been invented as a kind of a saying. It's completely false. Completely false. People who have been caught doing purposefully wicked or cruel things never run away and hide in shame with their tail between their legs. What they do is they immediately double down on the person that they've actually wronged, rather than holding their hands up in shame or holding their hands up in guilt and saying, yeah, it's a fair cop, you're right, or even trying to see the other person's point of view, whom they hurt. That does not happen at all. What they do is they get worse. They often, in fact, generally, they will run smear campaigns against the person that they wronged. In fact, that's one of the telltale signs of guilt. Any criminal psychologist will tell you this, that a truly guilty person doesn't hide their head in shame and run away. A, a truly guilty person attacks their victims. If they've murdered them, they attack their reputation and name. So, say if a wife beater, battered up his girlfriend, and she died, he will say it was because she was a slut, or she was working as a prostitute on the side and never told me. The guilty party will never say, I did a terrible thing and beat my woman to death. No, they will double down and they will accuse her of being a whore or a prostitute or having hurt him and so damaged him in some way. And he was driven to it. Or she was an alcoholic. He'll trash their reputation while they're gone, while they're dead. And that's always in an office situation where a woman is being bullied by a group of other women in a workplace situation, and they get caught by the management, or she goes to human resources and human resources pull them into the office and says, you shouldn't be bullying this woman. On the surface they will stop bullying her, but what they will do is they will do a whispering and a smear campaign behind her back outside the office and other places to destroy her even more. The guilty never run away with their heads between their tail between their legs and their heads buried in shame. That is one of the greatest lies we were all raised with. The guilty, the true guilty, the ones who are malicious on purpose, double down on their on that's why you can always tell someone who starts a smear campaign. If the smear campaign is organized, well run, hysterical and shrill, designed to get as many people on board, you can bet your bottom dollar that the people who are implementing that smear campaign have something to hide, and they've created this shill, hysterical smear campaign in order to deflect from their own culpability or guilt or something that they did that will make them look bad. And instead, they attack the person that probably wanted nothing to do with them because of what they had done to him or her, and then they turn around and try to make out they're the victims. You can be guaranteed that anyone who behaves like that is the one who's the real dirtbag. The real dirtbag is the one who runs the smear campaign, starts it up, organised, and tries to recruit as many as possible into it. That's the real scumbag. Look all through your life and you will see over and over again, whether it's someone that they try to turn you against at the office or something else, it was always the biggest, when all the dust settled and all was said and done, even if you got caught up in the smear campaign, you finally figured out, fucking hell, it was those assholes who were the really fucking guilty party in all this. But you see, the damage has been done by that stage. It's like what Johnny Depp said. Not Johnny Depp, Donald Trump over the Russian collusion lie invented by Hillary Clinton and the FBI. He said, "How can you ever get your reputation back?" Or all the other lies from these whores who claimed that she had he had raped them and stuff like this, or had sex with them. No, they all lied. But even though the only way you can get your reputation back is for good people to stand back from a situation eventually and go, "Oh, that person was done wrong. It was the actual one throwing the rocks who was the scumbag." So, and I'm not talking about throwing rocks in retaliation. I'm talking about the initial one. The initial organized attack is the guilty trying everything they can for others to figure out that they're actually the real guilty party and the real scumbags who did something nasty and have something to hide. And they're doing that to create confusion and hysteria, so no proper analysis of the situation is allowed, except that their hysterical, shrill, vicious, insane side gets the most noise out there, and therefore is considered to be the truth of things, which it's not. After the dust settles, after a few years, people figure out they were the real fucking scumbags, weren't they? And not the person they were attacking. And we now see that, and that with the Rona. Okay, we now see that with the Rona. That this derives from a discussion I'm having with some friends regarding the concept of forgiveness of people who were the worst kind of Branch Covidians during the whole last 2.5 years. Now, the way I look at it it's I would never tell another person how they should actually behave in this regard. It's a personal choice. Some people put across the point, and it's a fair one, that they were so, in some cases, not in all cases, that people were brainwashed and terrorized, and we'd never seen anything like this in our lives, and therefore I could cut them some slack. Maybe not forgive them as such, but like let it go. And then there's other people that say, "Oh no, they knew perfectly well what they were doing, and they were actually loving it." Even the ones who were terrified of the propaganda, they were getting a dopamine fix from joining in the mass hysteria. And there's both this, and so I'll never forgive any of them. Now, I would tend to be of the opinion that I don't forgive. Not being a Christian, I don't believe in. I believe very much in an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth as an extreme measure. My number one my number one way of dealing with betrayal or being treated badly or a knife in the back is ghosting. Ghosting is my go-to in these situations. So that's what basically I'll be doing. I'll be ghosting the non-members of the tribe, even if they didn't, if they would. I'm talking about the ones now who actually attacked us, either verbally, physically, online, and so on, or called us, they who reverted to their right-wing anti-science conspiracy theorist. I'm ghosting them. Okay, there's no comeback for them. There's the ones who were just did it for their kids or got caught up in love or jobs. Absolutely no problem with them. They're all fine. They didn't attack us. There's no problem there. But the ones who openly attacked us, who said that we shouldn't have been allowed medical treatment because we were not unjabbed, or said things like that we should be arrested and forced, mandatory. No comeback. No comeback for them. None. Zero. These are dangerous fanatics. Now, where this came from, this discussion, was there was two interesting articles published in the last couple of days. One was on Medium by a woman called Susan Durham, I think her name was, or Sarah Durham, and she spoke about how she feels great shame now at how she actually hated people like us who refused to buckle under the fascism of the last 2.5 years. She said, and she genuinely believed, like everyone else, that we, the sanguine gnosis, we in the tribes, were going to get our comeuppance and come out of this in bits, destroyed and wishing we were wrong. The exact opposite happened. And she said, we would still be in lock. This woman, Susan Durham, said, we would still be in lockdowns and restrictions today, not because we complied and took our 4 cups of tea or our 4 needlecrafts, our foghorn leghorns, not because of that. That would have kept the restrictions going. The restrictions collapsed because of the people that we hated. The what I was called by one of them online and on Facebook, a plague rat. We the plague rats, we the sanguine gnosis, are the ones who fucking freed everyone else. You remember that? Those of you who rolled your arm up and were good compliant citizens for your Pfizer police state, you would be still, if we all had have done it, we would still be living under tyranny. But the ones of us who had said no, the ones who what we had, we held, and I wasn't the leader of any movement. I was just expressing how I felt, and a lot of you out there were drawn to how I felt and agreed with me. What we had, we held, turned out to be one of the greatest acts of uprising in the history of the human race. You guys have to give yourself credit for this. We literally saved the world from global techno-pharma fascism. We did, just by saying no, because we had all put them in a position where this is the hill we will die on. You will have to pull us out of our homes, and we will film it and put it up on the internet to show you what you're about. And it was only because we refused is the only reason the human race has freedom. We freed the human race. And there was exceptional cases of this and examples, heroic examples of this, especially the Ottawa truck drivers who should go down in history as some of the greatest insurgents that ever walked this planet. They literally saved their nation under horrific and appalling bigotry and oppression. Did you know that some of them are... Trudeau still has political prisoners locked up from the truck drivers' protest? That's what those folks were up against. And they did sterling, amazing work against the bureaucrats, the civil servants, and the government politicians and all the other enemies of humanity that were trying to lock us up forever. So that woman, Susan Durham, in her Medium article, put down the point was that she now feels guilty that she attacked people like us because when history was written, we will be seen as heroes. But assuming that they don't go put the grip down full, which I doubt is likely right now, and I'll tell you why later on in the video. So if you're sanguine gnosis, pat yourself on the back. Don't be worrying about your family members and friends and peers who took the needlecraft. That was their personal decision, okay? Now, to drive it all home, why should I forgive people who called me a plague rat? Why should I forgive people who refused us, said we should be refused medical care? Do you know in Germany, here's how insane it is. The normies some of the more sentient normies are even starting to wake up now over the banana bollocks. Thank you, Olivia. The banana bollocks, the new one, right? The banana bollocks, some of the more sentient normies are laughing at it, quite rightly. That's because meme magic is working again like it did in 2016. Now, the banana bollocks that's going on right now, they're saying things, oh God, when I think back like a year and a half ago, you couldn't go you had to go the €9 meal in a pub. Can you believe they actually did that? No, people like me and people in the tribe were doing that. I'm saying the same thing that you're saying now. This thing was at the height of its mass hysteria, and you laughed at us and you attacked us, okay? So don't be telling us now, oh, can you believe the things that went on? The €9 meal that you had to eat in a pub and be out in 90 minutes. Can you, the insanity of it? And yeah, we were trying to point that out to you back then. And what you did was you attacked us. You attacked us, okay? So no sympathy for you from me. Now, there were endless stories in the media of people who didn't take the transubstantiation of the sacred needlecraft, right? And they died. They died of the Rona, right? We assume. And so there were stories like that, and all these same normies were posting things like, "Ah, Darwin Award, ah, serves you right, anti-science, right-wing fascist." I'm glad. I saw loads of posts saying, "Fuck him. I'm glad he's dead. I'm glad he died because he was unjabbed." And by so-called respectable people. I saw loads of that. And then when the transubstantiation of the sacred needlecraft started happening, and people were dying, the odd one or two side effects, a million and a half, whatever it is, and of this thing, right? I'm not aware of anyone on our side who said, "Haha, fuck him, Darwin Award." They were like, "Well, Jesus, we tried to warn you." That was as bad as we got. We showed exceptional humanity against their depravity. They were dancing on the graves of fathers, mothers, daughters, and sons who didn't take the needlecraft, and died in the hospital. And they loved the stories of showing of families members going, "Our father was against the needlecraft, and he died on his deathbed, saying, I wish I hadn't taken it." All these lies stories out there. NPR in America, an obnoxious elitist liberal radio station, is still running stories like that on their fucking stupid website, and this kind of thing. And I remember one of the ones who took the needlecraft and died almost immediately was an anesthesiologist in America. And they showed his post saying, "I got my microchip and now I'm going to join the lizards." Ha ha ha! All that kind of thing. I got my Illuminati microchip today and now I'm going to join the lizards. Ha! And then the next day he was dying. He actually wrote his own obituary as he was dying. The idiot. And he was saying things like, "Don't let this stop others from being anti-science. Make sure you get this." And this was right up there with like, "Oh, my mother died of the Rona. She was fully foghorn leghorned, but imagine how much worse her death would have been if she wasn't on the needlecraft." This is the kind of insanity we were dealing with. And people forget that us in the tribes, us sanguine noses, there were periods there where politicians were openly talking about arrests and concentration camps. Yes, or detention. In fact, concentration camps were implemented for people at Dublin Airport. The Irish Army were picking up Irish citizens and putting them in a concentration camp. You can call it a hotel. You can call it quarantine. It was a fucking concentration camp with soldiers on the door. That's what was done in this country, okay? And worse happened in other places and still go on in the likes of China. There was a point when I saw that happening, I said, "We are getting very close to the knocks on the doors and the trucks arriving to take us away. We're very close." Especially with that sadistic, insidious beast Varadkar in charge of this country. Mediocre, vicious, sadistic beast, and all those other cretins, around the world, like Jacinta Ardern and Andrews and all the others, Trudeau. The exceptionally vicious cretins were licking their lips at the thought of us being arrested and locked up. Now, should we forgive that? No, I never will. I'll never forgive that. Ever. Ever. And I'll never forget people who agreed with it. They ran towards the day I knew that the Rona restrictions were going to end in this country was when the government said, through their lackeys, this thing called NEFID, we're looking at mandatory needlecraft. I watched that and I said, that's desperation, one. Secondly, this is the last roll of the dice for them on this thing. But thirdly, if the population agrees, they will start arresting us. It's coming. Now, rags and scumbag outlets like the journal.ie and News Talk Radio here gloatingly ran with this story, thinking it was great. And there was one particular Irish journalist, a tabloid journalist, who openly called for this and arrests of people. Remember his name, because the day will come when this globalization thing will fall apart, and we'll have the names of every journalist, civil servant, bureaucrat, and everyone else who wanted to remove our civil rights, and we will make sure to remove their civil rights for the rest of their lives for what they attempted to do in the name of lining their own pockets with money. Money from advertising revenue on the internet or on newspapers or on TV. You remember those names. You pass those names on. See, one of the great tragedies of Ireland, because we're a Christian country, is in 1916 we had a revolution in Dublin, an uprising in Dublin, that was successful. Don't let this history books, just because it failed that week, it was literally the first battle in a war that it was successful. But as the first battle was lost, like in all wars. But we were raised in school told that, like, you know, the people of Dublin mocked the rebels. That's not true at all. The working class were actually proud of them and thought they were wonderful and were amazed by their military tactics and their ability to hold out against the best army in the world for a whole week, with so few of them. And there was elements of Irish society that cheered and clapped the British troops when they arrived at Dunleary to come put down the Irish people clapping the British troops when they arrived at Dunleary to put down the Irish rebels. That same demographic is the same one in the 1950s who would have been doing everything the archbishops told them to do under Holy Catholic Ireland, including putting their own daughters in a Magdalene laundry because some guy fancied them, all the way through, and they would be their great grandchildren were the ones today saying, "Well, we really have to enforce, these restrictions, and these anti-science, right wing, the same the same putrid seed of malignant want, the same vicious seed." I can guarantee you, the same neighbourhoods in South Dublin that cheered the British troops landing at Dunleary to put down the Irish are the same motherfuckers who ride by on their bicycles, and the same families who ride past on their bicycles in their lycra, slagging off people as calling them, anti-science, and you're anti-science, right-wing fascist. The same families, the same rotten bloodlines, the same establishment rats, the same ones. It's just the middle class establishment and the upper class, middle class establishment is the same from generation to generation. What they do is become vanguards of the zeitgeist. And then when history ends, it's all put to bed very quickly. I'm sorry, those neighbourhoods they clapped the British when they came to put down the Irish. If as soon as Ireland was free, I would have went around and said, I want to know the name of every last one of them who did that. Because guess what? You're not going to have the same opportunities in this new country that the people who fought for this new country are getting. They're getting the jobs in the civil servant. Oh, you work in Dublin Castle and you clapped when the British came in. Okay, you're unemployed. I would have done that. I would have done that because we would have cut off that insidious, beastly, ghastly Irish establishment normie bloodline right there and then. And we wouldn't have had half the lockdown we have here. Oh, Leo's Ledge! The same ones go, Leo's Ledge! We're like the same ones who stood on Dunleary Pier going, well done, boys, come here and destroy us Irish. We're disgusting. Leo's Ledge! The same fuckers. The same fucking pieces of shit. Running through their blood. A stream of fucking quislings. And they'll never change, okay? So why should we forgive people like that? Now, another thing that brought this up was there was an article published somewhere called "Now I Understand the Good Germans," and it was beautiful. I'll try and find and put it in the links below. It was beautiful. It was an article about. It showed exactly how the Holocaust and what we, the unjabbed, went through was exactly the same thing, identical. The trust the science types of Germany in the 1930s had declared that Jews were the cause of all the typhus. Middle class and upper middle class Germans lived in paralyzing terror of two things: typhus and tuberculosis. They were seen they were seen as diseases spread by the Jews. And when even no, when hit after the Nuremberg racial laws. Now, all Germans who were perfectly friendly with lots of Jewish people that they knew, right? There was 500,000 Jews living in Germany when Hitler came to power. So every single German knew a Jewish family, was friends with them, knew them, worked with them, whatever, right? Stood. Now I know there was the ones who tried to stand up against it met grim consequences, but most were cowards. Most and they were and lots of them went along and said, well, the reason why the Warsaw Ghetto existed was because scientists stood up and went, the Jews are spreading to typhoid and tuberculosis. We need to quarantine them. Did you know that? That's why the Warsaw Ghetto was implemented. So they moved all the Jews of Europe into this Warsaw Ghetto to quarantine them so they wouldn't spread typhus and tuberculosis. And when they had outbreaks of typhus and tuberculosis within the Warsaw Ghetto, what would you think about what 2 or 3 million people crowded together in a tight, small area? Of course, the viruses and diseases were going to spread. Of course, that was going to happen. And they said, "Oh, there's your proof: science, science." And all the German scientists, "Oh, aren't we wonderful?" And all the German "I fucking love science" types are going, "Oh, science! Yes, we locked up the Jews." Well, the same mentality was rising against us during the last 2.5 years. And at some points, it got very fucking close to that. Very close to that level of quarantine. It happened in other countries. You could tell they wanted it. They fucking wanted it. So many of them. So the good Germans, the ones who said nothing as their neighbours were carted off on trains, their Jewish neighbours, you know, yes, there were some who said, that's pretty, I don't like what they did to the Goldsteins, but the majority would have went, well, you see, it's a scientific thing. You know, these Jews, they're spreading typhoid and tuberculosis. And as a person of science and an educated man, it's best we put them into quarantine until it's gone. Now that's literally how the Holocaust happened in that instant. That's literally how it happened. You know, so it was also a way of exterminating them. They'd kill each other off with typhoid and tuberculosis because the poor fuckers were all mashed up together, right? So what? Why? I totally get it that that Jewish people to this day are wary about some Germans. Yes, you can't blame Germans today for what happened, but it's a lesson for all of us and all of humanity. That's what the middle class are capable of. They showed it during the Rona. They showed below their middle class, superficial, be kind mentality. Stay at home, save lives. That they were, many of them, not all of them, of course, were vicious thugs who would stop at nothing in order to prove their worth to the establishment. So, when Allied bombs rained down on Germany, I only feel sorry for the Germans who didn't like the Third Reich or genuinely were upset about what was done to their Jewish neighbours and couldn't do anything about it. The good Germans who said, it's for science, it's for the country, you know, the bombs raining down on them, that was their chickens coming home to roost. That's what that was. Sorry. And I feel the same way with those types. The people who are having now bad effects from the needlecraft, blood clots, strokes, and now banana bollocks. The ones who are coerced into that or terrified into it, didn't really want it. I genuinely feel sorry for them. The ones who rolled up their sleeves and went, inject me now in the name of science so we can stand up against these uneducated right-wing racist fascists who don't want to be lab rats for, big pharma. Inject me now. I've no sympathy for them. Them getting their blood clots and their shingles and everything else is no fucking different than the Germans who said, well, we have to put the Jews in ghettos to protect us from tuberculosis. Turkey, who got rained on by Allied bombs. Chickens coming home to roost. Chickens coming home to roost. So therefore, in terms of forgiveness, there's two aspects to it. It doesn't matter if you forgive or not, because Its chances are now that this is now looking at the greatest medical catastrophe in the history of the world, and many of the ones who've taken the transubstantiation of the holy needlecraft have medical conditions now that will destroy their lives if not kill them young. And I feel sorry for the ones who were coerced into it or did it out of love to protect their families and stuff like that. I have no love for the one. I know lots of people who got the needlecraft and never said anything. And know that I make these videos and never said anything negative to me. Never said anything negative. They were just like, live and let live. I have all the sympathy and love in the world for them and forgiveness. But there were the ones who went, "Nah, Sheridan, right wing, no, nah," hey, fuck you. I see those starfish shaped uh, blood clots in your body as a as angels of hope that will remove the world of scumbags like you. I really do. I really do, because you will do it again. Now, bring us to the next, because the respectable people, the rational people, the educated people, the ones who endorse the establishment are the most dangerous fuckers out there. Every last one of them is a serial killer in a sweater. I swear to God. Because all they need is what you saw in Germany and what you saw here in other countries during the appalling lockdowns is the excuse to rag on us. And the proof of that is that the minority that's picked on is still picked on when the likes of Professor Ferguson has run during the Mr. Lockdown, Professor Lockdown, actually runs off to have sex with his girlfriend outside the curfew zone. That's proof, and they still hate us more than him. When it's found out that members of Ireland's national TV station had a mask-free, non-social distancing party during the height of the lockdown, they still hated us more than the ones who did that in RTE. When members of the Irish Civil Service had a going away party and took selfies of themselves, non-social distance and not wearing masks, the same normies hated us more than them. They still hate you. You could have a situation where Bill Gates could go on TV and go, "Hey, guess what? Me, Pfizer, and all the governments and everyone else, we got together and we injected you with a deadly thing to wipe you out, to depopulate the world." And they would turn around and go, "Fucking anti-vaxxers!" Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Are such creatures worthy of forgiveness? Now, things are changing at the moment. There's a lot of positive stuff in the world, okay? Now, those of you who don't like me and been already shitting yourself through this video, want to kill me, let me add to your torment, because I am the angel of torment, okay? We're back to 2016 and meme magic is working really great as well. You can literally hear the latest one is that you don't need any meat because all meat will give you banana bollocks. That's the latest one. You can't eat any meat. All meat has banana bollocks, because even the normies, the sentient ones, are laughing their asses off at the banana bollocks stuff that the media and the governments and the politicians are doing everything to push. They're laughing at it. And the meme and how it's happening is the meme wars. We're back to 2016 again, and meme chaos magic has power once more, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful, okay? And some of the memes are just fantastic. Cocoa Pox and some of the ones I've seen are just brilliant. And the normies are like, most normies now, I say about half of them anyway, are not falling for it, and they're basically would be what we were 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, regarding it. They're laughing at it, and they're laughing at the absurdities of it. You can literally hear the shrill, hysterical emails flying from the Gates Foundation to the WF in Davos right now, and the WHO to governments and media outlets desperate to make this banana bollocks fly. and it's not happening because it's central to their next big, their agenda to lock down the planet. Oh, there's another one. It's a DNA treatment. Ho ho ho! These right wing fascists are saying it's a DNA treatment, and it was. It was right on the fucking package. This is what we were up against. Should we forgive these people? It was written on the fucking package. And what's written on the AstraZeneca package? It causes it's a monkey virus inside it. How can you see? One of the primary reasons you can't forgive them is because they don't have the brains to acknowledge and accept forgiveness. They don't have redemptive consciousness, where if you forgave them, you'd say, okay, they've learned their lesson. Well, the next thing would come along and they would be exactly the same again. That's what I'm saying about these intergenerational South Dublin establishment families, middle class types. They cannot be redeemed because great grandpapa cheered the British when they came to annihilate the Irish. You know, grandpapa cheered the government when they refused tampons for women because they were considered sexual objects. Uh, Father agreed with the bans on contraception, and he agreed with he agreed with all the things in the 70s that brought the country to economic ruin. Because he was a civil servant, it didn't matter to him. And a young Finian O'Funacon is the one in Lycra on the bicycles, cycling by going, anti-vax, ah! So they don't find redemption. They don't have any self-internal analysis. So it'd be one thing to say to them, okay, we'll forgive you for what happened in the last 2.5 years. But I can bet you anything, if the next thing came along and we were on the opposite side of the establishment, they would start up again. So that's why they can't forgive them, because they're unreformable, irredeemable. Because the primitive, animalistic consciousness can't function at that level. It cannot function at that level. To see videos of people screaming at people for not wearing a mask, and they themselves are not wearing a mask with someone next to them, shows you the elitistness of it. There's a desire to control people is the ultimate thing behind it. And that's what happened in Germany in the 30s. What the same people responsible for the Holocaust are the same people responsible for our loss of human rights in the last two, or people who have even been damaged by needlecraft. They're the same people. They're no different. They're the same ones, the good citizens. So I don't like the good citizens. I don't like what's out there mostly. I told you from the start, I said from the moment this thing began, I said two things. Now we know how the Holocaust happened, and what was the other one I used to say? The greatest education ever. And tell me that's exactly what we've learned in the last while. We've learned that exactly. The greatest education ever. How quickly and savagely the establishment came to remove our civil rights. And the only thing that stopped it was people like you and the tribe out there who said, you'll have to kill me first. And they were not expecting so many of us to be that brave and to demonstrate that fortitude. It was quite simple. My body, my choice, and don't you fucking dare even think about it. Whatever people want to do, good luck to them. If there's a genuine problem, I will do the things you need, like, social distancing and wear masks in the public for a while. If there's a real problem, of course we will do that. But to put an experimental, not fully tested substance made by corporations whose only agenda is to their shareholders into my body during a rushed situation, sorry, I refuse. And I will refuse for the rest of my life anything like that. Forgiveness, it's a personal choice how you feel. To me, it's bespoke. It's from case to case, but I can guarantee you one thing. I will never forgive the ones who gloated over people who didn't have the needlecraft and died. I will never forgive the ones who wanted to lock us up in internment camps or force this injection upon us. I will never forgive them. I will never forgive anyone who delighted in the whole thing. There were many sort of repressed hidden fascists out there who delighted in the whole thing. They delighted in us having our... I can go on holiday, you who can't. There was a lot of that out there, a lot of that, a lot of that. Jacinta Ardern. So you're saying that people who are not fully inoculated, what get Needlecraft, get your life back, and she goes, how can you forgive creatures like that? How could you forgive creatures like that? How could you forgive creatures like Leo Varadkar saying, well, you might never ever go on holiday again? Smirk, 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 smirk. How can you forgive that? How can you honestly forgive them? You can't. How can you forgive anyone who went to that? I was talking to someone in New Zealand who was on air, is in the tribe, and he was saying what was amazing was how many they thought New Zealanders were like Irish people, that they were kind of like a little bit rough and ready and wild. And he said to see people championing Jacinta Ardern's fascism, and they saying things like, it's because she's a world leader doing it right. And that to me is something that we've all seen in our own countries. Should we forgive that? No, because what you saw there is someone who would think nothing of putting Jewish people in the Warsaw ghetto, because they believe they spread typhus. Fear brings out the demon inside the middle class normie. Don't forgive them. Always see them with great caution and be prepared any minute, because once their middle class comfortable lives are in any way threatened and they have an ability to find a minority to attack legally, you see, they can't hate people of color anymore. They can't hate religious minorities anymore, but they still have that middle class establishment normie need to hate minorities. What did the governments do when they started picking on us who refused the needlecraft? They turned us into a minority that they could legitimately bash. Love yous all. You're fucking heroes. Thank you. Sanguine gnosis. What we had, we held. But remember, forgiveness is an individual choice. Know your enemy.